All right. Hi, everybody. This is Sherry, and I'm here today with Ned. And I'm starting out this series called the Fintech Founder Series, where I will be chatting with different fintech founders around the Southeast Asia region to learn more about their experiences in running a fintech startup. What are some of the learnings within the intersection of finance and technology that could be interesting for everyone? And then what do they think about their own personal finances? Just a quick introduction on myself. I'm Sherry. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Peak. We're building an AI-powered personal finance CFO as a service. And I'm joined today here with Ned, and I'm super excited to have this conversation. Hi, Ned.
Hey, Sherry. Well, it's good to be here. I love podcasts. And as you said, this is full circle. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, you were on my podcast for my startup that I had and don't have anymore. And I love the idea of podcasts. So thank you for having me on the show. It's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what actually gave me the idea was just a couple of weeks ago, we got caught up in person, and it was just such a good conversation where I learned so much. And I was like, it'd be a shame if the rest of the world didn't hear about it, right? So that's like some of the best nuggets of information come from these conversations, right, between two people building.
And you know, it's funny because sometimes people say, there's too many podcasts. But when you look around, if you ask all of your friends, how many are doing a podcast? Hardly any. Sure, there's millions of podcasts, but they're all original because your podcast is only your podcast, right? So I do think podcast is the future of media. I just think it is both video and audio. So yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. As two fintech founders, we could talk all day. That's the only problem, right?
I know, we're going to just struggle to keep this under 45 minutes, which is kind of what I'm aiming for. So I would love Ned, if you just gave like a quick introduction about yourself.
Absolutely. So I'm Ned. I live in Singapore. I'm 57 years old, and I've been in fintech almost 30 years, so quite a while. And I've been in sales, I don't know, since I needed money. So since I left my parents' home at 18 or 19, I started in sales. So and again, always been in Asia selling, designing. But I'm not really a product guy. I know what people want to buy, so I help in designing product, but really spent 25 years in corporate finance, in corporate world, in finance, equity trading. And then Sherry, I don't know if everybody knows this part of my story, when I was like 48, so like 8 years ago, just before I started Bambu, I was having a bit of a career break, and I met the Robinhood guys. And they were like, do you want to run Robinhood International? And we talked about it. And I remember thinking, this shows how egotistical I can be. I'm like, what do these kids know? I'm going to do my own thing. So instead of joining Robinhood, the rocket ship, I built my own, and it took off and didn't make it. So that's me in a nutshell. Somebody who sometimes takes the right decisions and sometimes takes the wrong one.
Well, that's pretty crazy. How did you actually meet the Robinhood guys back then?
They came to Singapore in 2015. A friend of mine had met them in California. They were coming to explore opening Asian markets, and I used to run E-Trade, if you remember E-Trade.
Yeah.
So I ran E-Trade. So my background is online equity trading, and they were looking for a guy. And it's funny, Sherry, the other day, I looked back through the emails. I'm like, did they offer me? Did I say no, or did they not offer? I don't think I actually really turned it down, but I didn't pursue. And anyway, it's too traumatic. It could have been anyway. They came to Singapore. Being a sales guy, I put myself front and center to meet them. I met Vlad. That's in sales, you always put yourself in the right place to ask questions. You don't always give the right answers, but you always put yourself there.
Yeah. Actually, you bring up a really interesting point where you're like, hey, I'm not a product guy, I'm a sales guy. My goal is to really sit down and ask questions and understand the users. And to be honest, I think that's actually a really, really core part of product. So can you talk about how having that background actually has helped in, building products, even though you don't call yourself a traditional product guy?
When you're always the revenue guy, you get just launch it. So I think that helps with product, because without crapping on product people like to build. So if it's finished, they have to stop building. So they just keep building, right? Whereas revenue people, we need revenue, so stop building so I can sell it. So I think being always the revenue guy means you have to think about product in time, get it out. So there's another Ned in Singapore called Ned Low. He helped build Sing Life. He works at Mission Plus now. And he was on my podcast and he told me a phrase I've never forgotten. He said, if you're not embarrassed by your product launch, you waited too long. And, that helps me. I'm like, it'll be fine. Just launch it. Let's go. Totally fine. The product people are like, oh, but we haven't got this button or that button. I'm like, dude, right now we haven't got any revenue. I don't care about the buttons. I want revenue. So it does help me think in that, I can speak to tech people. I'm not a coder, but, my favorite joke is I can spell API. So I know enough tech to spell API. So I know more than business people. I know less than tech people. But I think my product skill set is, guys, we need to get this out. It needs to make money. We can't sit and overthink what it might be. Let's go. And of course, that doesn't mean what we produce always works, but that's how I think about product sharing. And I think it's really important because, you can sit in a room all day and build product, but Steve Jobs, he had this phrase, and I'm sure you probably know, real artists ship. I love this phrase, right? Like if you want to build beautiful art, that's great, but you got to ship it at some point. So let's get it out.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, if you think about the most prolific and the most famous artists, right? It wasn't like they woke up geniuses, right? I mean, think about Basquiat. Like, I think that guy, before, like, he passed away early on, before 30, like, he produced thousands of pieces of work, just produced tons, right? And so it's just reps sometimes. I mean, I think about even, our launch, I put in quotation mark launch, right? A launch anytime somebody besides someone on the team is using the product. That's what I think of launch.
That's
right?
fair.
You don't think it's not like this big press event, this like PR announcement on Tech in Asia. So we also try not to overthink it, Ned. We were just like looking at this, we're like, okay, is there like a single unit of value that we think a user might be able to derive from this over Microsoft Excel? And if the answer is even just like 70% yes, maybe, we just shipped it. We're like, all right, we're just gonna build as we go. And of course, were there people that came in and they're like, this product is so early, I'm not really ready to use it? Yeah, of course, right? But actually, it was a lot of the feedback from the people that believed in the product, can see, how fast we were moving, that actually got us to get to the product we have today. So I see it as something you have to do together. Yeah.
Just as before we got on the call, you said, "Oh, we've got V2. It's so much better than V1." And you're like, I can't believe we had V1. Of course, Sherry, soon you're going to be like, "Oh my God, we had V3. I can't believe we had V2."
I know.
It's never ending.
I know. It's and sometimes like, talking to users is nice because they sometimes remind you of like how far you've come, right? Because when I'm looking at the stuff I build, I often just see the gaping holes of like, oh, this is where I wanted to be. This is the vision, but we're still working on these 3 tabs, right? But yeah, but for other people, right? Like that's not the context, and that's not the context from where they're coming from. They're coming from a place of, I have maybe just one problem that has been really annoying for me, and you're solving that problem, and that's great. I don't need to know about 3, 4, 5, 6 version yet, right?
So, and thinking on the product and sales, if you have the next thing coming, it's too easy for the buyer to go, oh, I'll wait for the next thing. Selling what you don't have, if we think about startups, and I did it at Bambu, and we'll get into Bambu at some point, but one of the things when I reflect, we kept telling people, oh, we have this cool new thing coming. And in enterprise sales, it's easy for the bank or the big enterprise to go, okay, we'll wait for the next thing. Sell what you have.
Yes.
As tempting as the next thing is, because the next thing's always better. Let's face it, nobody thinks, I know, I'll build a worse feature. Nobody's building worse features. Everybody's building better. They may be worse, but they think they're better. So you tell clients, oh, I have a better feature coming. So what do? They wait.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah.
If you're a startup and you're listening, don't.
Yeah.
Tell them what you have. Even if you don't love what you have, it is what you have. Like, it is what you have. And believe in it and sell it. Don't sell the future because it'll get you trapped.
I love what you're saying, Ned. And this is, again, a trap that I think I fell into initially because, by the way, the first time I was selling ever for the company was not to customers. It was to venture capitalists, right? You have to sell. You cannot sell where you're at today because they're not investing for where you're at. They're investing for that like 100x idea or the vision. And so when you talk about like your company, this is what we're going to be doing in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, right? But for a customer, like, you're absolutely right. And one of the things that I used to do as a, maybe a bit of a shortfall in my own process was I would talk about, hey, we're going to ship this in a month to a customer, thinking that would motivate them or excite them. But it would either make them feel like, oh, like there's something missing today and I'm going to wait, or they feel like, oh, I'm not getting the best version right now. So instead, we basically talk about what we have. Here are the brokerages we have today. Here's how these things work. And we are working on stuff, of course, but we're not going to tell you the details until they're actually out, right? And this is the product.
But it's super hard because as a founder, you're kind of delusional because we all should have stayed at our corporate jobs, right? So we have this, Alice in Wonderland view of the world that, oh my God, it's amazing over there. We keep going. Your brains are wired to do the next thing. But if you've got to, in the real world, when you're selling your real product to real clients, you've got to step away from that edge.
You do.
You're right. With VCs, you've got to tell them about the amazing world we're going to. But customers want to buy today. And I think it's a, in B2B tech especially, I think it's a huge learning curve that many startups have to go through.
Absolutely. So speaking of, Bambu and your own B2B startup journey, I would love to hear more from the beginning, right? So what was the initial inspiration for starting Bambu? And maybe go through the journey with me and the audience now the same way that you talked about a few weeks ago.
Sure, happy to. And before I do that, I'll give you a thing that struck me, and I hope this helps for some founders, and then I'll tell you the story. As Bambu was shutting, and we shut it, right? So it liquidated, we shut it. I remember thinking, oh my God, nobody will want to speak to me again, right? Now, I know that's not true, but we're all human, right? You think, oh my God, it fails. Of course, I know, we tried hard, it didn't work, it's okay. But you have this, and I was always told, always get an exit as a founder. Like for your career, you must be an exited founder, right? And particularly in Asia. In Asia, I was always told it. So when it failed, and then when we published it publicly, I remember when I pressed the button on sending the Tech in Asia story to everybody on LinkedIn, I was like, oh my God, everyone's going to hate me. This is going to be the worst thing in the world, right? And exactly the opposite happened. Like the amount of love, kindness, it got 500,000 views, over 1,000 DMs. People want to know. So to any founder out there, I'm not saying, of course, would I rather be sitting here with a $100 million exit? Of course I would, right? So I'm not pretending this is what I wanted, but people aren't unkind. It is okay. You try, of course, unless you did something wrong, like, I don't know.
Deserve it, but yeah.
If you literally ran off with the money, then you deserve all the crap you get. But if you tried hard and it didn't work, it's okay. So just to say that on the other side of it. And that's why I'm happy to share, because I remember thinking, oh my God, no one's going to want to talk to me. People have been so kind. So I think it's important that I give back too and just tell the story. So that's because, quite a few people said to me, oh, wow, you're so brave sharing. And I built Bambu in the limelight. I didn't build it in the quiet, dark corner. And if you live in the limelight, you have to die in the limelight. That's my view. So just the context when people ask me, why are you sharing? I'm like, just this. So 48 years old, lived in Asia all my life, had very good, lucky corporate career, been a C-level guy since 38. Had done fine, all good. I don't know what happened, Sherry. My brain fell apart and I thought, I know I'll do a startup instead of earning lots of money in an easy job. I think, Sherry, I saw a lot of, and please don't take this the wrong way, but the young kids, the 20-year-olds building fintechs, and I'm like, how hard can it be? And I found out it was really hard.
It's okay. I won't take it the wrong way. I'm over 30, so it's fine.
Okay. Well, you're definitely closer to 20 than me, Sherry. But I remember thinking, look, I've been in fintech. E-Trade wasn't called fintech in the 90s or the 2000s, but I was part of online trading in the 90s. So I've been in fintech. I saw other people doing it, and I think it was a bit of an ego thing. And why did I do digital wealth? In 2015, I spent 6 months helping one of Asia's first robo-advisors. It's called 8 Securities. They were my friends from E-Trade, and I just did a little bit of work there to help them. They were B2C, and they said, can you come in and see if we can do B2B as well? And what I found was that B2C and B2B tech stacks don't really work together. And I said to them, look, guys, I don't think your tech stack. But what I found was quite a few banks were interested in digital wealth. Even in the early years, I was like, hey, I don't think you should do B2B. And they agreed. And I was like, you okay if I do mine? They're like, yeah, go for your life. So, Sherry, it wasn't this, oh my God, I've got to fix wealth. And just for context for people who are listening who don't know Bambu, it was a B2B robo-advisory. We designed and built robo-advisory for financial institutions. We built the tech, designed, built, deployed. So depends where you're listening. Think of Betterment, Wealthfront, Stashaway, Nutmeg. We designed and built products like that for financial institutions.
Yeah.
And Sherry, I was just like, okay. I'm a sales guy. I found people who said they would buy it if I built it. So 2016 comes, and then I had the big decision. And this is a decision that I'd be interested in your view. Do you sell, then build, or build, then sell? So we sold, then built. I put together a slide deck. I said, I have nothing, but I will build you this if you want it. And within 2 months, I found a client who paid me $250,000 to build a robo, but I had nothing. So now I got to go and build a robo. And now I know some people spend a lot of time building a product and then going and selling it. I don't know which is the right way, Sherry. I'm just such a sales guy that I only know to go sell.
Yeah. My answer is it's always somewhere in between, and it's an iterative process, right? I think of it as, what is the minimum that you can either sell and then quickly build to get validation, or what can you minimally build then sell to get validation? So it's kind of like it doesn't really matter actually where you start. And I think depending on who you are, you're going to have a natural tendency, right? So maybe for yourself, it is to kind of talk to customers and sell something, and then, scope it out and work with the team on it. And then for someone like me, actually, I'm a little bit more comfortable having like something put together and then going out and talking to people about it. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but I think it's like, what's a minimally viable test, right? What
I think that's the right point. I think too many people are either scared of selling or spend too much time building, and they get trapped in between. They're not selling, and they keep building.
Yeah.
And that like at some point you got to go. Like you got to go. Now whether you sell quickly and build later, or build quickly and sell, but I think too many. So in the first year, we won quite a few clients. We won Standard Chartered. We won Thomson Reuters. And, so again, we were designing and building mass retail robo-advisory applications, kind of putting it together as we went along. We raised $400,000 in the first year, 2016. We got to like $500,000 revenue. The second year, we got $800,000 revenue. We raised another couple of million. The first few years, Sherry, it was like, 400 rev, 800 rev, 1.6 rev.
Oh, great.
We raised 400,000, then $1 million, then $3 million. But in the end, we raised close to 20 million, a lot of money. I think, and we ended up with some of the world's largest banks as clients. Standard Chartered, HSBC, Franklin Templeton, CIMB in Malaysia, BCA in Indonesia. But then we also won Brazil's largest bank, Itaú. We won a client in Saudi Arabia, UAE. We got a bit carried away. We would try, and so when I think about it, we scaled to close to 100 people. We got to several billion of AUM. We got to several 100,000 of end users, and really, had won lots of awards. We were very public about growing. We won lots of startup awards. We had a very strong brand. We talked a lot, and our business, what we were doing, we were like, part of the podcast was, if anybody's thinking about wealth tech, any financial institution, they should at least talk to us. So with our newsletters, with our podcast, with our product, with everything we did, we really wanted to be in every conversation, and we got that. So what happened? Two key things. We ended up hiring too many people. And why? We got trapped between being a product company and a services company. So what do I mean by that? We built a suite of APIs to do robo-advisory, financial planning, onboarding, transactional into broker custodian. So we designed and built the whole stack. But for each client, we customized a lot, too much, and it wasn't repeatable customization. And we would charge, our business model was to charge for the custom integration, and then get recurring fees on the number of users and AUM. But these bank integrations are long, heavy. The time goes on. We did them as a fixed bid. If people know what a fixed bid means, it's you say a price and you have to deliver it all. And we ended up really more as a kind of services company with a product back end than a pure product-led company. And that was the problem. I think we were victim of our own kind of sales success. We signed like almost 30 banks over our whole time. I use the word banks to mean asset managers, financial institutions.
Yeah.
But we kept hiring more people to do the integrations. And some of the deployments were very successful, but some not so much, because maybe the client didn't put money into marketing. So we ended up with a lot of unscalable clients, which was negative margin. And in the early years of 2016 to 20, you could raise money on the belief that your company was growing. We were growing, $500,000 rev, 1 million rev, 2 million rev. We went from 5 clients to 10 clients to 20 clients, from 1 billion AUM to 2 billion AUM. But still, we were never making money. And I think in the environment where, Sherry, in 2019, I was seeing digital banks with 1 million revenue getting a 200 million valuation. Crypto firms.
Yeah.
Crypto firms with zero revenue getting a 200-300 million valuation, right? It was, people had lost their minds, and it was, we got to a couple of million rev, and we didn't get those valuations. But when 2022, 23 came along, you just had to be profitable. So what happened is, in the last year of our business, we really tried as hard as we could to go away from growth and into profit, and we got close. We got close. We had several millions in revenue, but the cost was just over that. And in the end, we couldn't get it to profitability. So we decided that we had to close it. And in the end, when we closed it, it had to be liquidated. But a large number of people brought the code. So our existing clients brought the code from us, kept our products running. Some other people brought it. So a lot of Bambu lives on. Some of the code lives on. Some of the people are working at these other places running the code. So the Bambu spirit and code lives on, but the business did not make it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I think there's just so much to kind of unpack here. Part of me believes that there was, sure, I guess during 2020, 2021, you could have been that, few percentage of founders or VCs that were like, this whole thing is just completely nuts, and just try to behave counter to the trend. But it was just really hard. Ned, our company, off of a white paper, 0 product, 0 customers, we raised 30 million valuation in 2022 with nothing, right? And it sounds bonkers now, but that was just the time. And do I wish I raised that way? No, actually, to be honest, wish I didn't. But I don't know how else I could have acted, because literally everybody around me was doing it. And especially as a first-time founder for myself, I didn't have the history of being look, I've critically thought about this problem, and this is my view, even if it's counter. When you don't have experience, or at least for me, when I didn't have experience, I just went with what was just, happening around me. So in a way, I feel like, what happened with Bambu was not unique to Bambu. It was just the time, right? And we all learned our lesson, right? But it was just tough. It was just really tough.
We've all learned it. We'll all forget it. We'll all relearn it. We'll all forget it. This is the cycle, right? Yeah. The cycle is when money's easy, everyone gets greedy, and everyone's like, oh my God, yay. This might be the next $1 billion company. I have to put money into it. So yeah. I think it's like anything. It's in hindsight, and we definitely shouldn't have hired so many people, but we kept winning accounts. But we should have critically thought, are these good long-term accounts? Are they all margin positive? And could this business stand up at its current state if we had no more funding? And we didn't think that soon enough. So Sherry, one of the mistakes. Okay, so founders, if you're listening, don't believe your own bullshit, right? We tried to raise money at Bambu 5 times. The first 4 times, seed, next seed, A and B, we raised it pretty quickly. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm a genius. I'm not a genius. Oh my God. because I raised money, you think, oh, we deserve money, or I did a good job. Of course, we did part of a good job, but you discount the fact that there's zero interest rates, there's money everywhere, and you know, if you go out and ask, and what happens is when you suddenly don't raise money, you're like, oh, wow, I wasn't a genius all those 4 years. Oh, I see. But it's very hard in the moment. So as you say, Sherry, you know, you went out, raised at a great valuation. That's actually, and you know now, isn't the ideal way, because it means you have to come down in it. But at the time, it's super hard to be that self-understanding and that self-critical. And you're a human. You're optimized to get the most. Like, what are you going to do? Some few can do it, but yeah, if you're a founder and right now is the best time to raise money. Not the easiest, but the best, because your investors will be more realistic. The valuation, if you wanted to start a 10-year journey and you can raise money today's the time to do it.
Yeah. I think you're really right on this point, Ned, because I think even just a year or so ago, it was like a lot of fear and conservatism in the market when it came to deploying. So even if you had a great idea, and many people did have great ideas that just didn't see the light of day because they just happened to run out of money at the wrong point in time, right? And again, had they been able to start their companies later and raise in this climate, it might be different, right? Because now you got people who are like fear, greed is a scale, right? And so people are a little bit like more, you know, towards the middle now than like completely in fear, right? And so yeah, I think that's right. And sometimes it is hard. Like, you know, you're a poker player, right? So I always tell people this. I think a lot about poker lessons and building a company, right? You're going to have upswings and downswings in poker. And you're going to have times, especially in the beginning, where you just have an upswing. You win 12 games in a row and you're thinking, Sherry, I'm a fucking genius. I am so good at this game. And then you get just demolished and you just lose to a point where you're like, I don't even know if I can win a poker game anymore, right? Like, I don't even know if I can win a hand. And then you stick around long enough to realize, look, life has so many ups and downs, and you don't know exactly when that's going to happen. But building any strategy for longevity to kind of survive each of those different cycles is actually what is key and most important, right? So, yeah.
Me and Sherry have never played poker together, but we will one day. We both share a love for the game. We both share a love for the game, and I think it is a really good analogy in that, you know, and I'm going to assume quite a few founders play poker, but you know, there's something in poker called variance, which is you can, and I hope people understand, you have two aces, you put your money in, and someone calls you a 7-2, you know, a 7 and a 2 come, you can beat yourself up, but you made the right decision. And there's you know, the phrase in poker, Sherry, you know, don't play results, right? You can't play results. And to the non-poker players, what that means is, if it was the right decision, you believed at the time, you put your money in, even if the poker gods made your aces get cracked, you lost, it was still the right decision. But the problem is, let's say you put it in with aces 5 times in a row and you lose 5 times in a row. It's very hard on the 6th time to be still going to put it in. I'm still going to put it in. Like, and this is with the startup. You have to manage. There were times, Sherry, during Bambu, I remember walking into an investor in America, and in the meeting, he shook hands for $7 million, right? And I always remember, I didn't expect it. We shook hands, and I walked out onto the street in Chicago, and it was this funny thing, Sherry, that it was like 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and you know, everyone in Singapore was asleep. And I just wanted to call somebody. I wanted to call somebody and scream, oh my God, I just signed, like we just got $7 million. Oh my God, I'm a genius. And you know, I'm not a genius. I know I keep saying that. I say it with humor to understand I'm not. In that moment, you think, oh my God, I did all the right things. And then, you know, the next day we messed up a delivery for a client or something, and the client's screaming at you like, oh my God, I'm an idiot, right? I'm such an idiot. And like poker, the variance of making good and bad choices, you just have to get more than 50% right. You will be a winning poker player if you get more than 50%. I think in startup is actually harder. If I think of Bambu, I'd like to think of Bambu, I got 60, 70, 80, I don't know, percent of my choices right. But in a startup, you just get a few percent wrong, and that will take you down.
Yeah. It's really, really tough. I mean, there's another person who I like to follow, which is Jim Simons. He's like the
Of
famous
course.
guy.
Renaissance Tech.
Exactly, right? And then he basically had the philosophy of like, you don't actually have to be right that many times in life. If you find a 1% edge, 51%, right? You milk it, the shit out of it, right? It's
Yes.
hard to punch, but that's it. And sometimes that's the case with all of this, right? It's just, and again, the science of getting to that edge is not easy, right? That can take years, decades, right?
And it's imperfect in startup land. So you're doing peak, right, at Bambu. There's so many times you have to make a decision, and you don't know. There's no definitive, right? It's not definitive. You're like, launch today, launch tomorrow. Put this feature, don't put this feature.
Yeah.
What do I put in? What do I put in the fundraising deck? We were talking before this. You keep changing I kept changing the deck. The thing about decision making in startups, it's imperfect. And I found, I'm interested in your view, 8 years at Bambu was amazing, but highs of highs, lows of lows. There was definitely, and I think one of the hardest is when you're just getting piled with decisions. Now, when they're easy decisions, hey, you want to raise money and everyone's giving you money, who do you take money from? Easy. When you have to cut costs, when you have to do the hard things, that's where you really learn. And I'm sitting here today, I know this sounds, you hear people who come through hard things, and afterwards they say, I'm really grateful, whether it's a disease or a hard time or whatever it might be. You often hear people say they don't regret. I've been asked, do I regret doing Bambu? And on a logical level, yes, because if I just stayed in corporate, I'd be all good, right? Now, I regret it from a financial sense. It's also hard on your family, working 80 hours a day for basically no pay, blah, 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 blah. But what I don't regret is the experience, of the incredible decisions and things you have to do and what you built. And I like this phrase, wounds. In the moment, there was times at Bambu that, I felt wounded. It's hard. But I like this phrase, wounds are painful, scars are valuable. And those sitting here today, I don't know, Sherry, it sounds a bit, I feel kind of indestructible a little bit after being through startup land. I feel I have this of course, I'm going to get shit wrong again in the future and I'm blah, blah, blah. But after being through startup land, even though I didn't exit, what I got was this little cloak of indestructibility, because I'm sure there's more shit that's going to come, but I took a lot of shit that I didn't make the company through, but I'm still here. And that's the great thing about doing a startup. We sometimes say it's hard, but hard things are great. It's a win-win. Even if your company doesn't work, the day it fails, you're going to feel pain. And for time, you're going to feel pain. And I still feel some pain. But I'm also, as time goes on, starting to realize, wow, for life, it's super valuable. Of course, I wish a different outcome, but can't turn the clocks back, Sherry. It is what it is.
I mean, we have to live our lives actually not for the, infinitesimally small moments of we hit this result or hit this milestone, because actually a lot of times we realize it doesn't always matter. To me, it's actually the journey that you have when you go along. Did you feel like you sat in the room next to people you liked working with and came up with cool ideas and kind of laughed and maybe this will work, maybe this won't, but we're gonna try it, right? We're just absurd and ridiculous and we're gonna try it, right? It also comes from moments where when you do things that are really hard, right? For instance, letting go of people is always really hard as a startup. I think that's harder than most decisions because I'm a soft person, right? These things are hard, but after you get through them, you're I can't believe I was able to do that, right? And it's that feeling of you were able to kind of grow and see that growth journey in a way that you might not have gotten, right, being in a corporate job. I mean, I came from not quite, E-Trade, but I came from a big company before founding my own startup, and it was a remarkable and amazing experience, that I'm super grateful for. But I can't count. I would say that the startup journey probably gives me 20x insights and hard moments to learn than corporate. So I feel I've lived almost a longer life in a way, just because of so many different ebbs and flows and new shades of color I understand about the world, and that to me is the valuable.
Imagine you were suddenly transported back to corporate life. I didn't know you in corporate life before,
Yeah.
but I just think you'd be 10x what you were, because you'll be like, hold on, you mean I get to turn up 9 till 5 and I get paid and I don't have to make all these crazy decisions? Like somebody said to me the other day, could you go back to corporate, Ned? I'm like, oh my God, corporate would be like a holiday compared to running a startup. I mean, I'd be such a killer. It'd be ridiculous, right? Because and so you're right. I think whether your startup makes it or not, and this is the thing in Asia, you grew up in America, I grew up in the UK, I lived in Asia for a lot of my career. 30 years ago, when I moved to Asia, nobody was doing startups because the fear of failure was sky high and the loss of face was sky high. And you have to just take a normal job, doctor, dentist, lawyer, all the cliches, right? Today, we're starting to see that obviously in America, failure's always been very much accepted.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Everyone who came to the U.S., like, they weren't successful necessarily in their home countries. It's like we're a country of failures that, no, it's true, right? I mean, whether it was their fault or not, right? But it's true. Like, you came to the U.S. because you didn't like what was going on back home, right? Like, and so
I've never thought of it like that, and it's true. And so maybe that's why America accepts it. But in other countries, particularly in Asia, people, Singapore's come a long way. 10 years ago, it's super hard to recruit somebody to go in a startup because there's a large risk of failure, but it makes a country better. Why is America the most innovative country in the world? Because people are willing to just go at it, and maybe, as you say, they picked themselves from their country, went to America, did the hard things. And, I love America. I adore the place. Is it a messed up country? Yes. But both my kids live there. I adore it. But I think we're starting to see in Asia more and more, Singapore, I love it, but it's quite a risk-averse country. So naturally, it's not cut out to do startups, but we're seeing it. We are seeing that startup founders in Indonesia and Vietnam are building great companies, and they're willing to take failure. And that's why I think it's like this podcast. You got to talk about it openly. It's okay. Like, it sucks. As I said, I'd rather be sitting there with 100 million in everybody's pockets, but it didn't happen. So you have to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, and I think that, like, again, as you said, it's come a long way, right? A decade ago, if you were like, hey, I'm doing a startup, someone's like, so, like, you're doing a hobby full-time and paid, right? Now that there's, like, a few, stories or, people that, have done something and, if it's changed a bit, right? But I think it's something that will only continue to grow if people like us keep building, people like us encourage others to keep building.
It's so important. Again, if you look at America, it is a country full of people who are all entrepreneurs in essence. All of the people who came to America, have built, something. And I think it's great. Do we have, and I think one of the challenges today, so when I look at Bambu, again, we got a lot of people, we had a lot of amazing people. We're always biased. You love the people at Peak. I love the people at Bambu because, they're in your, you built this culture, this family. And I think it's, the more we do that, my dream, it's funny, I hadn't really thought about this, but of course I dreamt that, Bambu would be a unicorn and everybody would make a lot of money. And I had this dream that lots of little startups would come out from Bambu. People who've been at Bambu would do their own startup, and everybody there'd be, oh my God, the original, like you were at Google, and people come from Google and do their own startups. And I think that's what Singapore needs. We need more and more companies for people to go there and learn, come out, see the journey. But it's a generational thing. We're going in the right direction, and you just need pretty brave people. Maybe brave, maybe delusional. I don't know what the right word is, Sherry. We need a new word to describe founders between brave, delusional, crazy. I don't know what the word is.
Yeah. Reality distortion. Yeah. Edge of like what is just absolutely crazy and what just might be possible. Right?
But it does. But I also think it's really important to say, everyone says, it's super hard to be a founder. It is, but there's nothing better. Yes, the corporate life would have made more logical sense. You're building a financial wellness app or an app that helps people with their finance. I doubt in the middle of the app it pops up and says, quit your job, do a startup, right? It just doesn't do that.
I mean, doesn't matter which way you do the math. And by the way, I did do the math for myself when I left. There's no way when you do the math, you're like, look, the expected value is that I will be better off doing this startup, right? Is it possible that, like, if I were to simulate me doing a startup over, like, 1,000 times, that, like, one of those times could end up with a outsized impact beyond what corporate life could be? Sure, right? But it's not why we do it. Now, the finances part is still like a good exercise to just make sure you don't go broke, right? That's what I tell people. I don't do it to see how much money I can be making. I'm doing it to make sure I am not jeopardizing my long-term financial plan, right? And if the answer is it's okay, then I proceed. And so
it's what's the phrase? It's better to have lived a life than to die without having lived a life. I'm butchering it, but the idea is, we could all stay in our comfort zones. But that's not the, and it's not for everybody. I have a friend called Luke Jensen who thinks everybody should do a startup. I don't. And it's not because some people aren't capable. The world needs risk takers, and it needs people who don't take risk. We need people who want to do 9 to 5s. We need people who want to just go to the job, think nothing of it, clock in, clock out, and go home. We need that, because if everybody's out trying to build a startup, it would be chaos. We can't do that. It would be too much. But we do need some people to do it. And, I think it is important, to learn and listen. And I think probably, Sherry, I wish I had listened more to founders, because I kept reading in Crunchbase or Tech in Asia of the people who had raised 100 million and sold for $1 billion, right? I just didn't read enough about the people who hadn't done it. And I think there's a huge amount to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why I enjoy conversations like these, because, we are basically expanding our own, like, knowledge base of, like, what founding a company is. And if our only exposure is, like, what they share in YC school or what they have on TechCrunch as announcements, you're only getting a very kind of one-dimensional view of all of it, right? Underneath it, there is so much. So that's why, like, I've really enjoyed, instead of, listening to, just looking at the funding announcements or TechCrunch, I really enjoy some of the podcasts that, First Round Capital does with founders who talk about their, like, really early journeys of, like, like, actually, one story that I really enjoy is, like, the DoorDash guys. Obviously, they're huge now, but you know what they did in the beginning? They put up, like, a really basic site, was just trying to see if anyone would order from it. Somebody, I think, ordered Thai food in the Bay Area, and they fulfilled the delivery themselves.
Nice.
Like, we have a customer. Let's figure out how we can do it. That was it. It was like a bunch of dudes just being like.
But it's always it is always that, and that's the amazing bit, right? You look back on that. That is the amazing part of it. That can happen. And I remember, honestly, Sherry, so in the early days of Bambu, I went to my first conference, and just stupid stories. So I'm the sales guy, I'm standing on the booth, and it was at Bambu. I had my own little pop-up booth that I carried in, those fold-away ones that carry in the little tube, in the little hut. So I took it, I got to Hong Kong. I'm not technical at all. I couldn't set it up. I couldn't set it up. And I didn't know how to screw it in. And I'm sitting on the floor with a little manual. And this guy comes over, and I'll never forget, here's me trying to sell sophisticated software. And he comes over and he sees me on the floor because the conference is done. He's like, "Hi, what do you do?" And I remember looking up at him when I'm sat on the floor trying to screw together a little booth. I'm like, "Yes, I build sophisticated digital wealth software." He was like, "And you can't build a booth?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's pretty much it." I'm like, oh my God. But I don't think, whether it's, from all the companies that succeed, from Apple's and Microsoft's and McDonald's and whatever. I actually love that McDonald's movie, The Founder, when the guy was walking around selling, food processors, food mixers. There is that story, they are the most amazing steps. And it's so hard in those moments to think what it could be. Nobody starts a company knowing it's going to be huge. We think that they do, but we don't know whether it's from DoorDash to Square to Robinhood to all of these companies. They all started from that. It's like Airbnb, because they put up a blow-up mattress in their friend's living room during a tech conference because hotels were sold out. That's what they did. Everybody did their things, and they are some of the most amazing moments. What I wonder is, this idea 0 to 1. I probably think for me personally, I'm best at 0 to 1. I'm really good at getting people excited, getting it going. The full-on delivery stage, and clearly, Bambu, we struggled with delivery sometimes. We maybe, we did some of it really well, but not all of it. And I really think, try to think critically of yourself as a founder. What are you good at? Make sure you do, as a founder, you'll do everything, but try to think critically where you are, because I think in the moment, it's so easy just to run around and try to do everything. We had a description for how we ran Bambu, which is probably why it didn't work. It was called Beautiful Chaos. And it was probably quite true. It was our COO that said it, Hadger. And we had a huge amount of energy, but it wasn't always, and it was a beautiful feeling, but it was maybe a little chaotic. So every so often try to try to think, is everything I'm doing? And say no. We ended up building too many things. Say no a lot. If you're a founder, say no a lot. Say it with a smile, say it with kindness, but say no a lot, because it's the yes to the new feature, the new product, the new SKU, the new everything that takes you down the dangerous path.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I think there's this theme of you don't realize how little, how many things you have to get right, and the number is actually really small, right? What's your skill set? What are you good at as a founder? What is that edge you have as a company? What's that thing that your product should be focusing on? What's that wow moment, right? And I have this tendency as well. I love imagining the possibilities of everything, right? I can see how everything can work. I mean, that's why I'm a founder. I'm an optimist. But then just being able to have that second voice, right? That meta voice, whatever you want to call it, where you kind of check yourself to. And if you don't have it, by the way, it's good to have a co-founder or advisors or people you talk to who check you on it, because it's not always easy within yourself, right?
And it's important sometimes that person, that they have to be kind of, what's the right word? Tough, harsh, real. With love, they can do it with love. Yeah. But so I have one of my dearest friends. He wasn't part of Bambu. One of my dearest friends. He said to me one time, he's like, this is with a year before it closed. He said, "Ned, I love you, man, but this business is not scaling. It's not going to work." And it's super hard to admit to yourself that. And he's one of my best friends, and he was right. He didn't say it from a bad place. He said, you either need to fundamentally change it or shut it. But repeating what you're doing now, and we had several billion of AUM, we had big clients, we had a lot of good things, but we just hadn't built it in the right scalable way. And so find a friend or have somebody that can be, not just telling you, yay, you're great. That's too easy, right? Particularly for me as a sales guy, I would run around, find deals, bring them in, everyone would be like, good job. But really some of the clients I brought were great, but some were adding to the chaos. But I was so excited to sell deals. So I think as you build your startup, find somebody who can tell you whether you're on the right path. Because when you're on your own path, it's very difficult to look around.
Oh, yeah. Ned, this has been such an awesome conversation. I just have one last question, just to wrap it up. But I would love to know, what are you up to now? And you can answer this in any way, things that you were exploring, ideas that you're curious about, maybe new projects you're working on. But what's happening right now?
I appreciate you asking. So we are 6 months-ish after Bambu officially shut. The first few months, as mentioned, quite a few of our clients brought the code, and we were doing some, trying to wrap it up as best we could. Still ongoing to a degree. And then, I made a promise to myself and my wife that I would not do another startup, because it's a journey. It's a bit, it can be. It's a lot for the people around you as well. But also at 57, I can get another corporate job, because even though I'm 57, as people know, I run a long way. When someone says you're too old, I'm like, yeah, I can run 100 miles. It's okay, I got it. So, but I don't know if corporates want a startup crazy dude in their place, right? Because maybe I'm a little much. So And on the other side, 8 years at a startup where you barely get paid and don't exit isn't a great financial situation, so you got to earn some money. So a combination of all of those, and the thing I love doing, which is sales. I'm doing sales consulting. I'm helping startups generate leads by building them a sales process. My little idea of a business, it's not a business yet, but the little idea is called the sales movement. What do? We generate leads for startups using content. I find so many B2B companies don't have a CRM, they're not using LinkedIn properly, and they don't have content like a newsletter. I've watched you, Sherry, really build on LinkedIn. I think it's been super impressive what you've done. You know you're in the only 1% of people who post on LinkedIn? You know only 1% of people post? In 1 billion people on LinkedIn, 1% post. And
that's insane.
And I have found a little world in which people of my generation, 45 and above, are not posting on LinkedIn, because we didn't grow up posting, are not writing newsletters, are not doing podcasts, don't have a proper CRM, are not selling the new way. Sales is 2 things, generating leads and then closing leads. So I found a business helping old people to understand the new world of content, LinkedIn, CRM. It's called the Sales Movement. I have quite a lot of clients already, and I really adore it. And is it a startup? Well, it's a services business. I get paid retainers, it's cash. And my wife's like, so is this a startup? I'm like, no, it's not a startup. It's like a services business.
Yeah.
But it's still a business. But it's funny because I used to look down on services business. I'm like, oh, you have to be product. And now I'm like, cash up front services, like it's profitable day one. Oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world.
I completely agree with you. I think only 2 questions matter. Number 1, are you helping serve a customer in a way that makes the world a better place for them? And number 2, are you making money from making their life better? That's it. If it's a product, great. If it's a service, great. That doesn't matter, right?
I know.
Happy customers.
But if you raise money, we didn't talk about this, maybe we do it another time. If you raise money from VCs as a product company, you've got to stick with product, right? Because they don't want you to do services because the multiples on services. Well, look, Sherry, I appreciate it talking. Super impressed. As you know, I'd love to see Pete do well, not just because we've got to know each other. You also work with one of my dearest friends, Yin Yatmin, a startup founder who I have the utmost respect. I mean, I met that dude 12 years ago. I was his first investor, wildly impressed. So you've got an absolute superstar with you. So I would love to see it. And Sherry, in another world, I'm sure you know it's the main event right now at the World Series we're on. They just got into the money, and I don't know if you saw, but the bubble burst when someone got it in with aces over kings, and the aces held, and he bubbled the main event with kings into aces. Ugh. So life is life. You never know what's coming. So get out there and build a startup.
Right? Life is already unpredictable and chaotic, so you might as well just lean into the chaos, right? No, this has been absolutely amazing, Ned, and I feel like I could talk with you for hours.
I appreciate it.
We'll have to probably close this up and maybe do another one, but super enjoyed the conversation and hope you have an amazing rest of the week.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shay. I appreciate it, and good luck. We'll see you soon, okay?
Sure. Bye-bye.